This is episode 3 of Conversations with Contemplatives. I'm your host, Brother Diamond, aka Tai Dung Dai Min, with Bhante Suddhāso, my elder in the Dhamma, a wonderful teacher and the co-abbot of Empty Cloud Monastery. And it is with great enthusiasm and joy and humility that I will be interviewing Bhante Suddhāso. He has translated a great portion of the Pali Canon, the Vibhanga, the section on the Vinaya, and many of the suttas, the early Buddhist discourses. And I was here for around 3 months of last year, from early March to the end of May. And we just completed a 7.5-day silent retreat, which was one of the most powerful retreats I've experienced to date. And so I will begin by asking, what was your life like prior to discovering Buddhism? And from that you can segue into how you discovered the precious Dhamma.
Yeah, so I usually like to start talking from when I was 13 years old. So I had been raised with a very extreme fundamentalist evangelical Protestant upbringing. So that was the basis of my spiritual perspectives until I was 13. And what changed at that time was someone asked me a simple question. They asked me, "Why do you believe in God?" And I realized I had no good answer for that question. I realized that it was just what I had been told to believe, but that ultimately that wasn't a satisfying answer. And because it wasn't a satisfying answer, then my entire religious system collapsed instantaneously. It just fell apart in that moment. And that actually left me incredibly depressed. Very depressed, a sense of hopelessness and despair. So then I knew I wasn't happy and I wanted to be happy. I didn't understand anymore what the universe was, what reality was. I didn't understand anymore why we're here, what we're doing, why life is the way it is. And I wanted to know, I wanted to understand life. So this then led me to pursue these two questions. So how to be happy and how to understand reality. And eventually those two questions converged into Buddhist practice. But in the beginning I was pursuing them as separate things. Then my teenage years were mostly spent pursuing hedonism, so trying to find happiness through the pursuit of sensual pleasure, and pursuing wisdom mostly through studying philosophy, which both of these pursuits turned out to be pretty unsatisfying, actually. So no matter how much sensual pleasure I consumed, I was still not happy. It didn't produce any real satisfaction. And no matter how much philosophy I read, I still didn't understand reality. It just seemed to be a bunch of speculation, rather than any concrete way of understanding reality. And so what really changed for me was then when I was 17 and I was reading about different spiritual practices on the internet. And I came across the idea of Buddhist meditation. I started looking a bit more deeply into what Buddhism is, and how meditation fits into the Buddhist concept of awakening, and what is the Buddhist concept of awakening. And so what I discovered was that the Buddhist concept of awakening actually seemed to be an answer to both of my searches, both the search for happiness and the search for wisdom. And Buddhism, contrary to the other philosophies and spiritual systems that I've been looking at, contrary to them, Buddhism had a practical, straightforward way of developing and training the mind in order to gain that happiness and wisdom. And it was something which did not rely upon pre-existing faith. I later came to find out that faith is an important element of Buddhism, but it's not a prerequisite as it is for most religious systems.
Yes.
You can start practicing Buddhism without having the slightest bit of faith in it. And faith will start to arise as one practices and gets results, which is how it was for me. So at the age of 17, I started practicing Buddhism bit by bit and getting results.
So did you start practicing on your own, or did you find a group of meditators?
Initially, I was practicing on my own. So I found meditation instructions on the internet, particularly from the Japanese Zen school, and I was following those instructions on my own. Later on, I did go and visit some meditation groups, again in the Japanese Zen tradition. But most of my practice was solitary, so by myself in my room. But what I did have was a commitment to practice for a set amount of time every day. And I kept that commitment almost without fail for basically up until I decided to enter a monastery, which was at the age of 20. So at the age of 20, I decided that if I really wanted...
3 years.
3 years.
Solid 3 years of practice.
Yeah, so practicing every day, pretty much every day for 3 years. And it was really clear that I wanted to be a monk, that I wanted to commit fully to the Buddhist path in the most complete way possible.
And around this time, you discovered Tassajara, the historic Zen center, right? You were there at one point in time.
Yeah, so when I became interested in monastic life, since I was practicing Japanese Zen at the time, then that was what I was looking for. So I found a few different options, and Tassajara is the largest, the most well-known, not the oldest in North America, but it is the largest and most well-known place of, it's not quite a monastery, but a place of semi-monastic practice. So that was where I first went when I was 20. I went to stay at Tassajara, and I wound up staying there for 2 years.
Wow. 2 years. Any other powerful experiences prior to going to Tassajara or becoming a monk? For example, many of us Westerners, we don't make it a secret that we dabble in psychedelics to at least have a glimpse that, yes, consciousness can change drastically. So did that play a role at any point in time in your personal practice prior to taking on robes, of course, putting on the robes?
So I did many things before I became a monk. So I was exploring many different ways of developing wisdom, many different ways of trying to open one's mind to the genuine nature of reality. And some of those experiences were quite interesting. But what I noticed is that the effects faded. So one might have a profound spiritual experience, but then a few hours later, sometimes as much as a few days later, but inevitably it would fade away and the mind would return to its previous condition without much genuine transformation. So this left me somewhat doubtful about the real transformative value of such temporary experiences. Whereas practicing Buddhism day after day, bit by bit, the transformation was much more gradual, but much more lasting.
I can relate, yes. Well said. So, Buddhist Insights and Empty Cloud is going on 2 years. I think, did the anniversary come up yet? Or
so Empty Cloud Monastery is now just over 2 years old.
Just over 2 years old.
And Buddhist Insights is about 6 years old.
6 years old. So before you had organized street retreats, right, at the Rockaway House, and it was packed. From what you're telling me, lots of meditators there, packed in rooms. So a place where many people discovered meditation or improved their meditation practice. So you've also created a lot of merit and created opportunities for monks, nuns, and householders, lay practitioners. What's your vision for Empty Cloud and Buddhist Insights going forward, 2022 and beyond?
Well, generally speaking, what we've always done is to really just try to follow the teachings of the Buddha. So to develop better morality, better concentration, better wisdom, and to help other people in developing these three qualities. So that's what we've done all along. So I've never actually been one for making long-term plans, but rather my approach has been to respond to the needs of the moment. So Empty Cloud Monastery was something which came about because it was needed. So here it is. So what happens next will be whatever's needed next. Currently we're looking at having more of a presence in Italy, because in Italy there's a lot of interest in Buddhism, but very few monastic teachers there. So there's a definite need, and we're in a position where we're able to provide. So that's something which is, again, it's evolving naturally in response to the needs which are present.
Organic, yes, organically grown. Well, I definitely have enjoyed going on 2 weeks now of being here, and I definitely will be coming back to Empty Cloud again just to visit, if not for the Vasa, for the Sangha members and retreats. So this is a wonderful place for practice. I can't overemphasize that fact. It's relatively quiet, and the energy here will inevitably propel you to practice more deeply. Even outside of formal practice, you feel the energy of samadhi and sati here. So avidya, diligence, and so on. You can really cultivate the factors of awakening here. So if you haven't been to Empty Cloud, after this pandemic ends, and it will end because of anicca, vata, sankhara, conditioned are all impermanent, are all conditioned things. So try to come to Empty Cloud and support Bhante Suddhāso and Soma. They're doing wonderful things here. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for your time. Sadhu Anumodami. That's it. I can cut all this out. So cut.
Great.